I was mentioning to you earlier, where the only thing we could do is play football or soccer the whole day. It's finish school and go play in the streets until it's time to go have dinner. The 11-year-old, I took him to play. He just got distracted playing with the little grass. As I said, okay, this is not interesting. And I'm not gonna be the parent to say, no, you have to play football because I play. And no. Then we moved to Mexico, and here he fell in love with the sport. First of all, he joined a school where a lot of his teammates playing, so he said, "Oh, let me try. Maybe here is different." So he tried in a school, and then went to play in a team, and then suddenly he discovered his passion for goalkeeping. He's a goalkeeper.
Welcome to another edition of the Inside Scoop. My name is Neil Crawford. I'm your host and also the founder of Anytime Soccer Training. If you're not familiar with the Inside Scoop, it's a podcast dedicated to helping parents learn about the soccer pathways that would be available to their child if they lived in another city around the world. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. I have a parent on the show from Mexico. He's going to share his story. He's going to share his story growing up in Mexico, what it was like, and he's going to share his story as a soccer parent. And we actually connected because he's interested in traveling with us to Portugal, and that's something that we're going to talk about in another show as well. Frisly, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be here in your podcast. My name is Frisly Colop, C-O-L-O-P, Frisly Colop. I'm originally from Guatemala, but been living in a few places throughout my life. I grew up in Guatemala, a small town. I was mentioning to you earlier, where the only thing we could do is play football or soccer the whole day. It's finish school and go play in the streets until it's time to go have dinner. And the same on the weekends, play, with little kids in small towns, play in different teams. So I have been playing this since I can remember, And then moved to the US for college, and then to Europe and Asia for developing my career, and now living in Mexico for 4 years. Of course, for me, Mexico is like home. It's very similar to my home, the language, the culture, the food, but more important and related to this topic is the culture, the football culture in Mexico and Latin America in general. It's a big thing. It's number one sport, and it's played by everyone. That hasn't changed since my times. Everyone plays here, and of course, there are other bigger sports, especially in Mexico, boxing, baseball in the coast, but football is still the number one. So, and this also, because of the culture, there's a number of opportunities to do things. I myself just finished something that I've been wanting to do since I was a little kid. Now I got a diploma for a professional football coach. So it's another milestone that I got, but it's related to my to the sport that I love. I could say I love, but the story with my kids is different because my kids were born in Asia, and football there is not a big thing. Where we used to live, like maybe I can name 2 schools, and then it's the reality is not a big thing. And I said, you know what? As long as they're happy, they don't have to play. I saw them; they had no interest in playing. I have one that is 11 years old, and the other one is 6 years old. The 11-year-old, I took him to play. He just got distracted playing with the little grass. As I said, okay, this is not interesting. And I'm not gonna be the parent to say, no, you have to play football because I play. And no. And so it was like this. He started into martial arts, became really good. And then we moved to Mexico, and here he fell in love with the sport. First of all, he joined a school where a lot of his teammates playing, so he said, "Oh, let me try. Maybe here is different." So he tried in a school, and then went to play in a team, and then suddenly he discovered his passion for goalkeeping. He's a goalkeeper, and I was thinking, this is going to pass once he gets hurt or something. Like any kid, everybody's a goalkeeper until you get hurt, right?
Yeah.
And then, no, it became actually more like he got hurt a few times bad, bleeding nose, kicking. No. He said, no, I really want to be a goalkeeper. And it's been a journey because, in a team where it's not correct, but a lot of the times it's like, oh, it's the goalkeeper fault, something happens, the goalkeeper fault.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with that, the pressure. But I'm glad he chose this sport. Now it's all about. Now it reminds me when I was a kid. All he does is talk about football and talk about goalkeeper stuff and the gloves and shoes, and even I thought I knew, but with all of these new things, he has opened a new world of things for me. So it's kind of like the story with the older one. The younger one is 6 years old, so he's just starting to, and we're not pressuring him to play anything.
So that's a good story. Which city are you in now?
We live in Guadalajara, Mexico, one of the biggest football cities.
You're there now. Okay. Yeah. And then for our listeners who may be geographically challenged, including myself, where is that within Mexico?
It's almost in the center of Mexico.
It's in the center.
Center of Mexico. Yeah, it's a big city.
Big city in the center of Mexico.
Yeah, it's a big city, big football city, big tradition.
What year were you in Beijing?
In Beijing, I was from 2007 to 2011.
So what we want to do now is, let's assume I was moving to your city.
Yeah.
And I said, Frisly, I want my child to play soccer. And he's the same age as your son. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the structure of youth soccer to the best you understand it, and what options would be available for my son to play. And let's start off with, he can barely kick a soccer ball. He's just getting started. And then we're going to go all the way to the end of the spectrum. He's messy. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's the best thing you've ever seen. So let's start at the very beginning. I just want him to have a kickabout and play. How does it work?
Okay. First of all, it's trying to understand a little bit the structure, say compared to the US, how Mexico works. Here, and it must be the answer already for the question, but here in the US is very physical. It's very physical. The football is very physical. Here it's more like a lot of dribbling and then a lot of technique, individual technique. In the US is more like a team sport. That's one of the main differences that I found. Another thing is that there are more levels to reach the top in the US, I think, than here. Here, your child is really good. You skip a lot of levels, but that is dangerous also because there are thousands of kids that want to be in a really good spot, and they don't have a problem to tell your kid, you know what, you didn't do good in the game, thank you, but goodbye, and replace it with another. So I think it's less organized, but at the same time, as I mentioned, the football culture is bigger because here everybody plays. So let's say you come with a kid, two scenarios, one kid that is really good and one kid that is starting. The teams here have big traditions, the professional football teams. In this city, we have two big teams, so Atlas de Guadalajara and Chivas de Guadalajara. These two are big, they have a lot of people. And then you have other teams that are in second division, which are also famous. So all of them have what we call academies. So say 10 academies each in different parts of the city. And they also have academies in different parts of the country. The biggest teams here in Mexico have academies in different parts of the country. So the ideal is that if your son already knows how to play decent, let's say, join one of these teams in the city where you are. Because if I tell you, okay, you join the Chivas in your city, it's not the same as joining the Chivas in where the Chivas is from, where the headquarters are. It's different. The schools outside, and I think this is true for every big team. It's a franchise. It's not the real school. But here, the ideal scenario is that you join one of these teams, and they usually have recreational football, competition football. Then you go up when you're about 13, 14 years to the what call here the Fuerzas Básicas, which is the reserves, what they call in Europe, in MLS, Next Pro, and all of those in the US. And but there's not so many of them. You could jump actually from your kid, like you're saying, it is messy. You come try out for a team, immediately they will say, no, let's go to try out to the reserves, and then you might stay, and then your path to professional is not simple, but a lot of eyes on you. If you don't know how to play, there are also a lot of independent teams, recreational, that will take you. And nowadays, I've seen many teams, and this is a really good thing. Independent teams, clubs opening for kids since they are very little, 3-4 years old. It doesn't matter your level. And the academy is also opening recreational teams where you can join if you're not yet confident with the level of playing, because also the competition is different. There are some leagues that are local, but the level is medium hard, I would say. So they always try to put you in those leagues, and if you're competitive, well, you enter the competitive teams, and then you play every weekend in groups or super groups if your team is really good, and then you go to different championships in the country. So
all right, so hold on. So let me unpack this a little bit. At the very top, you have these two massive clubs, and they have these satellite academies scattered throughout the city or country.
Yeah, the country.
They have them throughout the country. Now, do you pay to play in one of those satellite teams?
You pay, or sometimes they have scholarships. If you're really good, they will give you a scholarship too. You don't pay anything. You just go there and maybe pay your uniform, maybe, but you have to make a commitment that you play there. And also here it's very normal that you are in one of these teams, and also on Sundays you're in another team just that you made for playing Sundays with your friends. That's very normal, and that also adds a lot of playing time, which is an advantage here, and it's not expensive. So, but yeah, responding to your question, it's sometimes you can get scholarships to play there.
But how much do the locals? How much is the pay if you make the team but you're not on scholarship to play in the franchise academies? How do the locals? How much is that roughly, so we can picture it?
It will be about $50 to $70 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you're in that academy, are the coaches paid?
Yeah, they're paid. They buy there at the academy. Yeah.
Now, and when I say are they paid, not like gas money, they actually get enough to make this work a part-time job.
Yes, it's
but they don't do that they do that full time, you think?
It depends how many kids they have in the academy, because some of them they train to let's say one in the 4 to 6 they train the 2013s, and 6 to 8 the 2010s or so. So they have 2 or 3 teams each. So it's for them it's a full time. Some academies, some coaches from other academies, they work in 2 academies, or they have their own academy. So most of the ones that I've known, they are full time in what they do.
All right. Coaches. And they are now, is it, to the best that you know, is this a independent operator who's been given the license to call themselves Chivas, or is this Chivas coming in saying we're going to send one of our own people down here to run this academy?
I'll tell you the example for my son's team is called Atlas. Is the other one. It's called Atlas. Most of them, okay, you have the professional and then you have the reserves. Those are people that train in the different facility. That's at the top of the kids there now, right? I think they start when they are 12 or 13 years old. You can start playing there if you're really good. The rest are academies that is almost like a franchise, but not really, because they give it only to former football players, professional football players of them, or people that they know. So they go through a process of selecting who can open an academy. It's not anybody can open an academy, because they have to follow the philosophy of the team, let's say. And of course, some people just open academies and call it the name, but they are not really official, But the official ones, they have to go through certain requirements to do that. Even like that, some are good and some not. I find that by experience, that some offer what they say, some don't. Some of them are, and this is in the US and must happen the same. It's all about money and not so much about how the kids develop. But some are really good. But for what I know, they have specific requirements to be able to open an official satellite school of the team.
So And by joining that, so by your child joining Atlas, one of Atlas's satellite academies, does that increase their chances of being seen by the pro team eventually?
It depends about the academy. Some of them are more serious than others. And of course, if some of them have 2 or 3 coaches that used to play in professional in the team, so all of those connections are really good. And I find out that at least here is all about how well you're connect with the other people to go through that path. And of course, they will make a recommendation for your kid that you should join the higher teams.
So, and then the academies, they have a recreational piece and a competitive piece even within the academies?
Yes, they do. They do. And most of it, I would say 60% of the academies have 2 or 3 teams sometimes that they're in different levels.
Oh, okay, 2 or 3. And then how many days a week do they tend to train?
Where we are trained from Monday to Thursday, 4 days.
At 2013, you trained 4 days.
Yes.
Is that a cultural thing in terms of like that's pretty standard, or is that unique?
I would say 3 to 4 days is pretty standard. If you go to an academy that trains only 2 days, I've seen also really good ones that only train 2 days, but it depends also where you play, because when I'm saying 4 days, it doesn't mean that they do physical training the 4 days. Sometimes it's more specific in one thing and more specific in another thing. So but us, we do 4 days. So the schools that I know do 3 to 4 days.
And does your son, who happens to be a goalkeeper, 2013, does he receive any specific goalkeeping training with the academy?
They do. We have a training outside of the academy also with a coach, with a private coach. But in the academy, basically his schedule is he arrives, he trains the first 45 minutes of the session with the goalkeepers, with the group of goalkeepers, and then they go the next 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes with the team, go back to the team where they practice in either the plan for the weekend or the technique or physical, not so much physical training because they do that with the goalkeepers, but it's half with the goalkeepers and half with the team, basically.
Now, in terms of how the independent clubs, the ones that are not part of the professional teams, are they big? How much do they cost? Are they tend to be well organized or not? Are any of them considered to be better operators than the academies that are run by the franchises that are run by the academies you just spoke to? Help me understand that, and then also help me understand how the leagues are set up.
Okay, for the independent ones, there are really good ones. Some of them good ones. They don't have the name basically of the professional teams, but most of them are. The owners are also used to be professional football players. So the good ones have a very good structure, similar to the academies, I would say. Big schools also 2, 3 teams per year, and the prices are, if not the same, a little bit cheaper. If before is $50 to $60, this will be $40 to $50. So it's not so much difference. Of course, there you can. Nobody guarantees you that it's good, because they are really good ones and they are really bad ones. But the coaches are not, probably never took a coaching class or play or anything, and they just do it because they're passionate about it, and that's good. But your kid is not gonna grow in those, right? But in the championships and the tournaments, some of them do really good. Actually, some of them do better than the academies at some point, depending on the age. And there's also the other teams that, pues I was telling you, the weekends. My son also plays in a team on Sundays where they don't train during the week. It's just a group of friends that get together and they play in a competition just for the fun of it, just for having more playing time. There is also a lot of people that do this. So those are the 2 things of the independent and the independent way, if you want to see it.
So then so in the States, we have a convoluted pyramid, but for the purposes of this, our state associations organize leagues,
Mm-hmm.
and then U.S. club soccer organize leagues. and it's convoluted. We're not going to get into the details. You know a little bit about it, but there are all these different levels. How does your FA, and by the way, and those state associations are governed basically by U.S. Soccer Federation. How does what role does your federation have in creating leagues at the youth level?
Okay, I think it's not so different. We have 3 or 4 big leagues. Number one is what we call the association or the federation league, where the top teams play. They play on Saturdays. It's a very serious championship, and you can see everything online. So, but that's under the federation, and there you can get even picked up for national team and things like this. And there are also 2 or 3 independent leagues that are very serious, and that are also part of it, but they're not really. Let's say you play in this federation team, you can't play any other team, in the federation. You can play recreational like we play, but you cannot do anything else because your name is already there. In the other more private leagues, which some of them are really good, you can do also, but they are not related to the federation. Let's say there's one that does this, and then the others are more like private leagues. And again, that's the beauty of this in Mexico, that you have 4 or 5 really competitive leagues, not necessarily associated with the federation, but are with extremely well-organized things, So it's 2 ways.
Yeah, so do you guys have this issue? We have this issue where our independent league operators, one of them would be U.S. Club Soccer, and they have like ECNL and MPL, these leagues, which are considered higher than some of the state association, most actually of the state association leagues, because the state association leagues, the initial focus was on grassroots, providing everybody with an opportunity. And then these independent operators came in and basically said, you know what, we want to create elite level leagues, basically. So they're actually perceived to be higher than many of the state leagues, even though the MLS, which is our highest professional league and highest youth soccer opportunities, is run by the federation. So, but they jockey for players and they jockey for teams, right? Oh, you're a member of this team. You're a member of this league. We want you to be a member of our league. So on balance, there's a debate on whether or not that's good for overall development. But I explained that to ask you, is it any of that going on with the way the Federation League, or is it clearly that the Federation League is the top and then the other independent leagues?
No, I think here is clearly the federation is the top. If you were in the Federation League, it's because you're in the top team, and then the rest are strong. But there's not really much conflict in here. For instance, if you want to play in the federation, they tell you, okay, you play here, but you cannot play in any other federation team. But they never say you cannot play in the other leagues. So
yeah, but what if you are Team A? And I want to beat this down. You're Team A in the Federation League, and then is it possible for Team A in another league to be better than Team A in the Federation League?
I think so, but the thing here is that a lot of times the academies play in both.
So what I was going to ask. So the academies play in the Federation League and in the
other one.
leagues.
Yes, the strong ones, they have teams there. They have teams in the independent top ones, and they also have recreational teams in another independent leagues. And we also have the leagues for schools, which sometimes guys play in the school team and they play in the federation or in the other teams. But most of the times, the academies want to have teams in all the leagues. They don't just go to one league. They go to all the leagues and they put their teams in different levels, And you see for instance, in the Federation League, you see the name of the team and they say A, B, and C, or white, yellow, and green. So it is in different leagues. Here, they don't say, okay, I play in Federation, I play in the other one. No. They try to play in all the leagues possible.
But I was just trying to see if there was any conflicts where the league said, in order to be with us, you can't do this, or if you're with us, you can't do that. But it sounds like you can kind of do whatever you want.
Here, the more, the better. And actually, a lot of parents, that's the question they ask. They say, where do you play? And if you say, "Oh, I only play in this small league," it's not a good thing. But if they say, "Oh, I play in the federation, I play in this other one, I play in this other one," that attracts a lot of people. Because parents wants to get their kids exposed to different leagues, and they want more play time. So here they play basically in all the leagues possible.
So let's talk about culture, and then we'll go back to the blocking and tackling. What is the culture like in terms of winning versus the desire to quote unquote develop long term? And now I don't want to go into a rabbit hole, but I have to add this qualifier that people, it's how you define development and winning. Meaning, some people argue, hey, winning is part of development. And if you're developing, you're winning. And some people will say, no, if we're developing, we're going to lose early on. And this is generalizations, but we're going to win in the long term. And some people say it doesn't have anything, whatever. So all those qualifiers for the listeners. But when you talk about the culture overall, how do the parents approach winning versus what they perceive to be as developing?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question because historically in Latin America we're really passionate about football. It's a cultural thing. But I noticed that here is becoming better in the sense that people are understanding that joining good clubs also means being patient so your kid can develop because there are little teams, for example, where you hear parents scream and they all care is that their kids win. Whether they are developing or not, it doesn't matter. But there are some other schools that since you join, they say, you know what? We have two teams. We're gonna see where your kid fits best. If you're in this team, you need to understand that he still needs to work. You're gonna go to championships that are less stressful because your kid needs to develop, and you have to understand that. Then they tell you this. And if you're in this team, your kid is more competitive. Most likely, he will play in big leagues, and the coach doesn't have the obligation to put him to play. If he can call him to the game, but if he feels that it's not the time to play, he's not going to play, and you have to understand that. And they say which path you want to go, and that's it in the big clubs. And and they say, you know what? But if you go to the games, please don't scream at the kids, don't do this, don't that, and don't think that these are going to be immediate results because all kids make mistakes. It's a nature. For instance, my son is 11 years old. I cannot ask him to play like a 20-year-old. I mentioned the goalkeeper to you when they said in the older teams, they say, "Oh, why you didn't stop the ball? Why you didn't?" They expect him to be a professional. He's not, and all the parents have to understand this because all the kids make mistakes. So to develop, you have to join a team like this that is clear that they want to develop your kids because they tell you he's gonna get more minutes with time. They explain you the process. Some other teams are not like that. A lot of teams, they expect you to be messy the first day you show up for practice and play like that on Sundays. And big part of it are the parents that they want immediate results. You hear the parents screaming at the kid, run more or take more the ball, or how come you shoot to the other. So culturally, I think it still needs to develop more because you hear a lot of this, but it's on the
Yeah.
way to develop it.
So if I'm there and we're going to get visual and my child is there and we go to the first game, am I going to hear parents coaching from the sidelines?
Yeah, most likely, yes.
Now, you've seen both sides of it in terms of you've been in America, you've been here, and you obviously are in Mexico. Do the kids, is that part of what they just expect? Or do you think it gets on their nerve? Like, is it just a cultural expectation? Or does it get on their nerves too, like it would sometimes with American kids?
No, it will get on the nerve. You see the kids expressing it physically, and hey, and then or telling the parents to shut up and things like this. You will see it, and I think it's the nature of a kid. There are a lot of parents that maybe they wanted to be football players when they were kids, and they express their frustration with their kids, and that's the worst thing that can happen to me. I can see, but you see it, and then it's kind of sad. But you do see these kind of things, unless you're in a league where they say don't do it. But even if you tell them don't do it, the more competitive it gets, the worse it gets. Especially when you have to travel to other places. Yes, it's unfortunately you always hear parents screaming things like this.
Now, in terms of the price to pay, the $40 to $60 a month to pay, and you said dollars, are you using that specifically, and then we need to convert it? Or are you saying that's roughly what how much we would feel like it cost?
That's how much it will cost you in US dollars per month.
Oh, okay. So, what happens if you can't afford that and you're not very good? What options does the parent have?
There are other teams that are more affordable. I when we started, we went to a team because we were thinking, he's not gonna like football. We don't need to pay for this. Let's go to a smaller academy, say $10 to $20. And also we have programs here with the government, with the federation in the public football fields that you can join, and you pay maybe $5 a month or something. Like, of course, the structure is different, and then there you have a lot of kids. If your kid is really good, most likely not going to play there, or he played there, and then they will recommend you going somewhere else. But it also, how the kids in the academies, they have uniforms and all of this equipment that they need. In those free places, you need to maybe buy a shirt, and that's it. And you will be playing also in maybe not so much competitive football, but there are options, even free options, like I said, to go play if your kid wants to play.
And the coach in those options is going to be volunteer or paid?
I think if it's from the federation, it will be paid. His job is to do that. And or you can join a team where the coach is a dad, and then you play. And sometimes they are really good also, but they are professionals. The ones that have the government academies, they're professionals.
Okay, so let me be clear. To the best of your ability, you're saying that the government, as the football of the FA as an agent, will step in, or is it the government outside of the football federation, or is it the federation as an agent for the government creating programming for lower income kids? Is that a fair way of describing it?
Yeah, it's the federation, which is sponsored by the government, the official federation, the official government federation. Yeah.
Now,
the Ministry of Sports, let's say.
Yeah, so like I lived in the UK, and the Ministry of Sports was very important in terms of funding. So they had a strategic plan on, okay, what sports do we want to invest in? And for health, it's also for global competition, right? Like the Olympic type sports. And they would dole out funding. And then what would happen is if you wanted to start a club or a team, you could apply. That was the thing. You could apply.
Exactly
you
the same thing.
Is that how it works? You get a grant and you go running with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me.
But side note, this is in big cities. In small towns, most likely it's a parent who started a team, and then they all pitch in for the uniforms, and then they play in a local league. In big cities, yes, you have these government facilities to play and free play.
And that makes sense. Now, those leagues that you mentioned, are those teams playing in those leagues? And if so, can they play at the highest level if they happen to be good?
I think I would say 5% chance. Not so much chance to play in those big leagues, because they are really competitive. Usually they say, okay, come 1 or 2 days to train and different teams. I don't think it's very serious. It's just if you want your kid to start playing, or if he already plays but you don't really have much money to play the others, he goes there. But it's hard because most likely they are not very competitive teams. They are a recreational level good, but I think they reach that.
Now let's pivot back to the culture. Thank you for that. The kids, the mindset of the types of typical kid on your son's team. If I were to ask them, do you want to be a professional soccer player? Of course, everyone says it notionally, but do they in their minds seriously think, okay, this is what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to become a professional soccer player. Or is it like half of them going to say, I'm just having fun, half of them going to be playing baseball, some of them going to be doing this? Or are they like, no, I'm trying to become a pro? What's the culture like?
I would say in the competitive teams, maybe 80% are thinking that they want to be professional. And then the creational, maybe 40%. That will be the way. And of course, the older they get, and they are in competitive level, it reaches maybe the 100% when they are, I don't know, 16, 17 years old.
So it broke up a little bit. So at the competitive teams, you would say 80% of them, regardless of how realistic it is, in their mind, they want to become a professional soccer player.
Yeah.
And then in the quote unquote recreational leagues, 40% of them are trying to figure out how they can break into a competitive team to eventually realize a dream of being a professional soccer player. Is that safe?
Yeah, correct.
Now, and we're almost done here. How does the scouting apparatus work? So we know on one end of the spectrum in the UK, for example, there's a scout on every corner. We know in the States, on the other end of the spectrum, the country is massive, and there's only like 30-something professional teams. So there's not a scout on every corner. Where does Mexico and your experience in the big cities fit in that pendulum?
I think that's the unfortunate part of football here. I don't think there are many scouts looking at the kids. It's really difficult that you get because of a scout sees you. Most likely you will get because your coach recommends you, or because you go to these open tryouts. A lot of people say if you pay. I never seen that, but I don't doubt that that happens. But scouting is, you go to these tournaments in Mexico and they always say, oh, the scout of this and that team will be there. I don't think it's that. Maybe in the important ones, maybe, but all of them, no. The scouting, I don't think it's a big thing here.
And you said the academies, even the professional academies, because like in the UK, they will bring you in at 6, 7, 8. They don't do that in Mexico in general, or do they? The professional teams?
I think they will start. The youngest is when they are maybe 9 years old, 9 to 10. But I always thought that that's a very dangerous situation because at 9, yeah, you have the kids that you can dribble everybody. But once you get in a competitive level, when you're 12, 13 years old, when everybody already grow and everything, it's really hard. I don't think it's as easy as it was. Some kids are born gifted with that, but once you reach 13 years old, it's a different story. So, and then you hear a lot of cases of kids saying, oh, I joined the reserves, what we call it, when I was 9, 10, and then they didn't play for the whole year. Somebody else came that is better, and goodbye. So it's that's the situation. They can join early, but that doesn't guarantee their success.
So let's talk about school soccer for a second. Let me give the 2-second version of the U.S. for our listeners, and then you chime in and compare it. So here, school sports is part of the fabric of America. Okay, So it's very common for kids to play school sports. That's number one. Now, in America, for the most part, you're not eligible to play for your school team until you're in what we consider to be the equivalent of 7th grade, which is 1 year older than your son is now. Now, there are some schools, especially private schools and charter schools, that you can play a little bit younger. But the general thing is about middle school. You can play for your school team. But school soccer, generally speaking, is considered lower than the club soccer route. That's in part because club soccer here is year-round. You're paying money. You get a professional coach, and you're playing in more competitive leagues. And it's just year-round, where school soccer, in many cases, you're going to get a teacher who also happens to be a coach, but it's not typically their top priority. In many cases, high school is a little bit different. And then on top of that, they don't have the contact hours, and they're getting a new crop of kids every year, right? Because you whatever. So now that I said, so then what happens is, let me say this, and then I'll pass the mic to you. what happens in general is this. Our what we would consider to be our academies, the kids are not allowed to play school soccer. So whatever their top team is. Mm-hmm. We have pro academies that are linked to the MLS. We have academies linked to what we call our USL, which are our second tier. And then we have clubs that don't really have a first team. So they're not truly academies, but they conduct themselves like an academy. That's a smaller group. And they also don't want you to play high school, but that's a small group. Everybody underneath that, they typically, once they get school age, will play half the year for their school and half the year for the club. And the club's program is designed that way. Okay, in the fall, we start our season. It goes like, say, from I think it's spring for boys, January to say, August or July. And then in the fall, you play high school, and it's reversed for the girls. Now that I said all that, how does school soccer work with you guys? And then what is the connection between that and how does that fit within how the clubs work?
Okay, here we play since we are first grade, second grade. There many schools make the school teams, and then they have almost these things like Olympics, when a lot of schools come and play, and you're still allowed to play in your club. And even in the academy, but I think once you reach certain level where you're part of the professional world, even you're 16, 17, then you can't play in school, but it's because they don't want you to get hurt and things like this. But when you're a little kid, you play first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. It's okay. We always.
So you can even play. Does your school at those younger age play against other schools?
Yeah, they actually tournaments just for schools. You cannot be a club. You have to be in the school to play that. So you can play in your school and in your team also outside of school.
Oh, okay. So how do the parents perceive it in terms of, so here we relegate school soccer to be not as good. How do they view it?
I would say almost the same, but there are exceptions with 3 or 4 schools that take it really serious, and they actually participate in those higher level tournaments. They don't participate in school tournaments. So, but yeah, school is more like fun. You play with your friends, but there's a team and there's a coach, and you can play games and things. But it is more serious if you play in a club.
Okay. Now, your son, let's talk about your son specifically. Does he play for his school?
His school doesn't have it's a very small school, so he doesn't have a school team, which is okay for us because we don't have the time to go train in the school anyway. He's from Monday to Thursday in this academy, so it's, even if they have, we cannot make it.
But is the school an option for kids who cannot afford club?
Yes, in a lot of schools and a lot of public schools, they all have teams. But yes, if you cannot afford it, or if you're not too serious about it, then you just join the school team. It costs you nothing most of the times. It's part of the school.
And who coaches?
Similar to what you were saying, maybe the PE teacher or somebody that is usually somebody from the school, not necessarily a professional football coach. So that's another thing.
But in America, when I say the PE teacher, in many cases they will not have a strong background in soccer.
Yeah,
and they may not have even grown up playing soccer. But in Mexico, the person who coaches the school team, not in Mexico, but in your city, is it fair to say they would at least have grown up playing?
Yeah. You can't coach kids here if you don't know, because the kids will make you ask you questions. You cannot teach them if you don't know how to do it. You might not be a professional coach, but at least you grew up playing. And most of the times they are, I would say, in 85-90% of the cases, the coaches in the schools have played football, even in university level.
All right. So I'm going to ask a couple more quick questions and then we're wrapping it up. Now, in terms of travel, how far do you have to travel to play games?
Is
there a lot of travel involved, like it is in the States?
Well, in the
Yes.
competitive leagues, you play inside your city, but this is a really big city, so 45 minutes, 1 hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes. It depends. Uh, when you are in a higher level, I will say 13, 14 years old and up, then you go state. You go play in different parts of the state. So, and there are some leagues that they have one base, and they say, we're gonna play here every weekend. So that's a different thing too. So three different options. But at this age, where my son is, we need to for the weekend games, we have one stadium when they play, and for the games that are during the week, they go to different places inside the city.
All right. So last question, and then we're going to summarize my understanding. You jump in. This might not even be something that's even part of the ecosystem, part of anything. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys influenced at all by expats because you're next to the States? And the States has this commercial sort of environment around youth sports,
Mm-hmm.
as well as just soccer development. Are Mexican expats or Mexicans who former players who played in the MLS and all this kind of stuff, or have coached in the US, or like I said, have family in the US?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's influencing soccer in your city in terms of how it's structured, in terms of the parents' expectations? Like expats like you who be traveled and familiar with how it works in the States, is that influencing in a good, bad, or not happening at all way?
I think it doesn't influence at all. They have really strong roots in Mexico, the football culture, and so I think we don't make any influence on their the way of seeing football.
And do you have any other Mexican expats who are familiar with the U.S. and then they move back to your city who have children playing that you talk to?
I do. I have a few friends. Yeah, I have friends that are Mexicans with their kids born in the U.S. and then they come here, and or the opposite. They are Americans, but they kids were born here. So it's you can see the football culture difference, especially with the ones that the parents are from here and the kids play there, and then they came here. You can see they are more. The way they play is more physical, more fit. They can run 90 minutes without stopping, but they are lack a little bit of the technique, or the how we call it maña, the tricky part of the football. So and the opposite with the kids that born here and then go there. I'm assuming it's over there is. I am assuming they lack a little bit of the physique over there, but they are more. They have this trick way of hitting football. So I think they are very different. The way the U.S. football and Mexico football they do, it's really different. But they both have things that they could mix and become really good.
I mean, and it's funny you say that. That's very interesting, and I just want our listeners to hear that and chime in. I know there's been more of a concerted effort now for these tournaments to be happening in the U.S., where they are looking at not just Mexico though, but all Latin American kids who are parents, or expats, and just seeing like if there's any potential there to bring them back to their academy. And then we also know those famous stories of Mexican American kids who the national teams are both national teams are vying for them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the U.S. wins one, sometimes the Mexico wins one. So that's also fun. So now let me just summarize my understanding and put this in a bow. If I move there, my opportunities to play, and you interrupt me when I get something wrong, or I can play school soccer as early as the first grade. If I'm in a big city, I can play for a team that has received a grant from the government and it's going to be relatively cheap with a volunteer coach more than likely, but they may get a coach just paid depending on the grant size. If I'm in a small town, I'll probably get a volunteer coach, pay a little bit of money and play in the local leagues. Then if my child is relatively good, I could play for a relatively local team, but the level will be higher and there's some variability there, I will have to do my research. And I'm going to pay the equivalent of $50 to $60 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach more than likely will get paid, even if they're not doing it full time, but they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Then there are the big professional clubs. At least two of them have their satellite academies throughout the country, and those satellite academies have teams at various levels, various age groups, and various competitive I say levels, but various levels of competition, which can broadly be described as recreational type kids and competitive sides. Those coaches are going to be paid, and many of them will do this full time and can work for more than one academy, and also can coach more than one team.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in those academies, you will have a better chance of being referred to by an ex-professional, but that's not an automatic pipeline to their academy.
Mm-hmm.
The actual academies start recruiting kids really young, as early as 9, which has its pros and cons. But I guess those academies will be set up the same way a European academy, the way we understand it, like a European academy.
Exactly.
And you can play in more, your team can play in a federation league, which is considered to be a higher league. But you also can play in the local operated leagues as well. And a team in certain teams can be better. A local team, not a local team, but a team in one of those local leagues could technically be better than a federation team, even though the majority of federation teams are going to be better. Is that fair? It's a little
Yes,
fuzzy.
but just to be clear, it could be better, but most likely it's not going to be better.
Okay, most likely it's not.
And also they now you can start training as when you're 3-4 years old. There's been a big boom of football schools for little kids, born in 2020, 2021. So you can start as little as that. Of course, that is more going to play, but I like the way they put it. It's more like train your motricity and the things for little kids, which is good. But yeah, those two things that you can start early, and those teams that might have a chance to beat the higher levels, it's a very slim chance. And after that, the 9-year-old teams that we were talking about from the professional, yeah, those are the top level ones that you most likely going to be a professional, and that you have to be in the city of that team. And there's only one for that, right? So one team for that. They don't have 1, 2, 3 teams. There is only one team per birth year.
Yeah, you got to be in the city. Okay,
like England, basically, like England.
Yeah, like
England. Yeah.
Now, does your federation league have promotion and relegation for the youth at the youth level?
No. That's why they have a competitive and recreational.
But like, if you're in the competitive, is there like competitive A, competitive B, competitive C? It's like that, and then if I'm in a lower, so we have promotion relegation at the youth level for some. It's complicated for us.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the state association leagues where I'm in division, I might start in Division 3, I can make it Division 2, Division 1, and I can move down. It's not. Is it not like that for any of the youth leagues that you're familiar with?
It's for that. It's like that once I think you are 15 years old. 15, 16, 17 years old. Yes, you can do that. You can go up or down. But it's just that age, not in the under 15. I don't think they have this.
Okay, and they're putting this in a bow. The professional men's and women's leagues, how at the pro level, how strong followed is it?
Really
like,
strong.
does every kid have? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can see the kids since they're little, they pick a side, and you know wear the team shirt wherever they go, and they are super fans. Actually, no, but everywhere in the world, what's happening now is that with the superstars, Messi, Ronaldo, all of this, what you hear in Mexico is that, oh, which one is your favorite team? You don't hear anymore, oh, it's Atlas or Chivas or America. You hear Real Madrid, Manchester City. So I think everyone in the world is happening the same. But But yes, that's what I was I meant when the culture thing, because you go to any city here and you see little kids already very well identified with their city, you know, and even when you have a city that has two teams, like here, the two big teams, you see parts of the city that you know is more from one team than the other. So it's a very nice thing. As long as you see in a positive way, it's a very nice thing.
So, if there was anything that you, in parting words, that you wanted to improve about how youth soccer is set up, we talked about you wish we could improve the parent behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But if
Yeah.
there's anything you wanted to improve beyond the parent behaviors, anything comes to mind?
I will say the scouting. You mentioned it, the scouting. I've seen kids extremely good, but maybe not in the best financial position that they cannot reach the levels of football that they can do. You can see when sometimes you see a kid that you say, you know what, this kid is I'm not talking about the ones that dribble everybody. That passes after you're 12, 13, but the kid that actually understands the game at such a young age, like is gifted. If we could have more people seeing this and taking them to opportunities, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So, welcome to the club. We have that problem in the States big time. All right, guys, this has been Neil Crawford, founder of Anytime Soccer Training and also the host of the Inside Scoop. I have sat down with Mr. Frisly Colop. You're a parent, avid fan, and you said you got your coaching license?
Yeah, I got the chance here finally to become a professional football 7 coach. Now I'm going for the football 11.
But
So
what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? Are you going to actually coach too?
I think I will. Honestly, to be truthful to you, what I really want to do is become a FIFA agent. So I played my whole life in high school and college, and then dedicate my life to my passion, which is the architecture. I'm an architect, and but I have also the passion for continuing, you know, and I like to train little kids. I train sometimes my sons and the little kids. A team, I have had teams before to train, so I'm trying to become more professional in that sense. First with the football 7, now I'm going for the professional football 11, and then hopefully reach my goal, which is the FIFA agent uh, position.
Well, we need more honest brokers doing this. And
Mhm.
I don't know what angle you're going to go from. You can tell in terms of your your vision, and but there's still a disconnect in the education in terms of what parents need to know and players need to know in order to cross, in this case, the border to play. What are you thinking? Right before I let you go, what are you thinking you're going to specialize in when you become a FIFA agent?
I think I would like to do something related to kids around the age of my son now, and more than just try to connect them to teams, is also work a little bit with the parents in their expectations, because you know for many parents are it's not clear what the teams are looking for. I have many friends in professional teams, and you know they were saying, now look, if your son has this and this, it's more likely that he can go to the next level, not even next level. But if you're not in these three things, you also have to think that professional football is not the end of it. You have college football, you have second division football, you have futsal. So working all of this area with kids and not so much with older guys, but in trying to make conscious out of this, and of course develop, if I can, connect kids to professional kids in the right way, you know.
Frisley, thank you so much for joining us on the Inside Scoop. If you have any questions, he's a member of our groups. You can reach out to him personally and ask him any questions. I'll link something with you guys in the group. And let's get better together.